thank you for being here today. I'm going to speak briefly in just a second. Then I will be followed by Stephen Lynch, Congressman from Massachusetts. I'm Walter Jones, representing the 3rd District of North Carolina. And then another one of our colleagues who's worked so hard with us for the last 5 years to get this information made public is Thomas Massie. He will be joining us shortly. And then Terry Estrada and her daughter Caitlin will speak. Then I will acknowledge there are 2 other family members that will not be speaking, but they are in the group today, and I will acknowledge them. And then those of you in the press that might want to seek them out will have that opportunity. So let me make a couple of comments. Stephen Lynch and I initially introduced this resolution calling on President Obama to declassify the 28 pages. The pages were classified by the Bush administration, and those of us who have read the pages, 3 of us are here today, will tell you there's nothing about national security. It is just information that the 9/11 families and the American people have a right to see, and then let that part of the puzzle of 9/11 kind of fit in. In addition to that, we have Congressman Lynch and myself and Thomas Massie have now put in a bill, it's 779, that will allow the Committee of Jurisdiction in the House to go ahead. That would be the House Intelligence Committee. Chairman Devin Nunes and the ranking member Adam Schiff have already publicly stated that they see no reason that the 28 pages should not be declassified. So we, the 3 of us, have put in a bill to go along with what we're trying to do by asking Mr. Obama to keep his word to the families. That he said on 2 occasions that the families have a right to see this information. We are very pleased that over 55 members of the House have joined us in the resolution, and I would imagine each one of them would join us in the House bill calling on the Intel Committee to declassify the information and publish it into the congressional record. So with that, at this point, I'm going to call on my dear friend Stephen Lynch, Congressman from Massachusetts, to speak, and then when Thomas Massie gets here, he might follow Sharon and her daughter Caitlin, but he will get a chance to speak as well, and then we will take your questions. So with that, let me introduce my friend and colleague in trying to bring the truth to the American people about 9/11, and certainly to the families of 9/11, the truth. And we cannot do that unless we declassify these 28 pages. So with that, I introduce my good friend, Stephen Lynch.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you. I want to thank Terry Estrada and Caitlin Estrada for being here as well. They've been arm in arm with us through this whole process. And I do want to acknowledge our friend, Mr. Massie, who may be along shortly, and also Bob Graham, our former senator, had a big role in the original 9/11 report and investigation, and he was with us a couple of weeks ago when we went down to meet with Jim Clapper, and he's been an advocate for this as well. My name is Congressman Steve Lynch. I represent the families of the 8th Congressional District of Massachusetts, and like Walter Jones and Mr. Massie and Senator Graham, and now 55 members of the House and I think 15 senators, we have united by this effort. We have united within this effort to call for the declassification of the 28 pages of the joint 9/11 inquiry. And we're also, as I said, joined by Terry Estrada, whose husband, Tom Estrada, died during the horrific September 11th attacks. Terry and her children, including her youngest son, Justin, who was born just 4 days before the attacks, and have been, along with Caitlin, just powerful advocates for 9/11 families, and have really renewed our sense of purpose of what this is about. We owe it to these families, the Estrada family and other families, all the innocent victims of September 11th, and to the American public, to provide a full accounting of the circumstances surrounding the terrorist attacks on 9/11. The declassification of these 28 pages is an important step towards answering the many questions that remain for the families of of these victims and our nation as a whole. These 28 pages will not only answer questions, they will raise thousands of other questions that I'm sure the press in its diligence will pursue. And as the lead Democrat on the National Security Subcommittee, I take classification very seriously. I understand that in the immediate aftermath of September 11th, there may have been security implications that resulted in the excising of 28 pages of this bipartisan, bicameral report. But sufficient time has passed, and in 2016, the government needs to be transparent and honest with the American people. As Thomas Jefferson said, an enlightened citizenry is indispensable for the proper functioning of a republic, and self-government is not possible unless the citizens are educated sufficiently to exercise oversight. In other words, there's no replacement for accountability. There's no accountability without transparency. So for the spouses, the children, the siblings, the parents of 9/11 victims, I understand that we are all seeking the truth and want to bring to account all those who were responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And at a time when the world continues to face challenges from terrorist organizations such as ISIS and Boko Haram, as well as Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, we must be mindful of the need to bring their financiers and their supporters to justice as well. At an even more basic level, our commitment to one another as citizens in a society that values freedom and justice demands that we hold accountable those who aided and abetted the savage attacks on our homeland and the murder of thousands of innocent civilians. If your representative has not yet taken time to read the 28 pages, encourage them to do so and to sign on as a co-sponsor of House Resolution 14. As Walter mentioned, we have overall 70 co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle. Bipartisan support from members across the country sends a strong message about the number of individuals calling for the release of 28 pages. It's also time to call on the Obama administration to fulfill its promise to finish the review process. It is ongoing to determine whether or not they will declassify these 28 pages. And as Walter mentioned in his closing remarks, there's another path here. And if the Obama administration does not go forward and declassify, then we need to pass House Resolution 779 to urge the House Intelligence Committees to publish the 28 pages. During our meeting with Jim Clapper a few weeks ago, they conceded on the point that the 28 pages is actually a congressional document. It's a congressional report. And that technically they're treating it that way. It is in our custody in the House. And so that's why Walter and I and Mr. Massey of Kentucky have introduced a second bill that we hope might bring the Intelligence Committee chair and ranking member to release those 28 pages so the true story of 9/11 might be known to the American people, and that the victims of 9/11 may have their day in court and may finally have the answers that they've been waiting such a long time for. So at this time I would like to introduce Terry Strada. I'm sorry. Oh, Mr. Massey has arrived. Okay. My great colleague, a hard worker, great advocate on this issue for several years, Mr. Massey of Kentucky.
I want to thank Mr. Jones and Mr. Lynch for being the leaders of this effort. And I want to address the question that I'm most frequently asked about the 28 pages. Will we be made less safe if the secrets in those 28 pages are left to the public? Well, no, we are less safe if they remain private. I mean, that's basically when you balance whether these should be released or not. Are we safer or not if the pages are released? And one thing is for certain, terrorism is not going away anytime soon. It's here, it's ever present, it's a constant concern for everybody in this country. Yet, why do we keep the blinders on? Why do we ignore what we know about what were the causes of 9/11? I want to thank Mrs. Estrada here for always being so persistent in coming to the Hill all of the time with her family and bringing her family. I know how hard that is, and never forgetting and never giving up on this. I am certain we will succeed. And the new tack, which is to basically acknowledge that Congress has possession and ownership of these documents, whether this president or the next president releases them, we have the power to release them right here in this building. We don't need to appeal to anybody else. And so that's what this most recent resolution is about, which I fully support, as well as our original resolution that Jones and Lynch led on. And so I just want to say I think we will prevail. I think we're getting closer. Looking forward instead of just looking back. I don't want to just look back. These pages will provide answers to the family and perhaps some resolution to the families and the victims of this event, this horrible event. But most importantly, looking forward, that's why we need to release these documents, so that we can better understand when we are debating the causes and sources of terrorism and seeking to prevent it in the future. These 28 pages will inform the public. They will inform members of Congress who haven't taken the time to go read it. And that's why it's so important to release it. Thank you. And next I want to introduce Terry Estrada for being such a constant force in being
Hi, my name is Terry Estrada. I am the National Chair of 9/11 Families and Victims United for Justice Against Terrorism. I represent over 9,000 victims' family members and survivors of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. We are here today because, although President Obama has made personal promises on multiple occasions to make public the redacted 28 pages from the Joint Congressional Report of 2002, unfortunately it appears that once again the Saudis seem to hold more sway than we, the American people. As we have stated in the past, on 2 separate occasions, President Obama told family members he would release the pages. We have sent multiple letters following up on those promises. But now, many years have passed, and his promises remain unfulfilled without any explanation offered, and our letters have been left unanswered. Instead, the President employed a stall tactic. He requested for the ODNI, the Office of the Department of National Intelligence, to review the pages and give a recommendation. We waited patiently for over 2 years for this recommendation to come in. We were promised we would have an answer by June 12th. The June deadline has come and gone, leaving us, the victims' families and survivors, and also the American people, feeling disrespected and asking, where is the transparency that this administration promised? I can attest today that this type of treatment keeps us, the victims, families, and survivors, in a perpetual hell, and is something we want to end. Since March, with our nerves frayed, we have had to endure a smear campaign by senior administration officials. Josh Earnest, the White House spokesperson, and CIA Director John Brennan, at least one who has never even read the 28 pages, and neither who had anything to do with the joint inquiry, but both have repeatedly parroted Saudi talking points in efforts to devalue the contents of the 28 pages. Among the greatest insults, perhaps, is that rather than standing for our fellow countrymen and women, these 2 White House officials toe the Saudi line and mimic the Saudi talking points, verbatim. As if speaking in unison with the Saudis, they ignore all that has been said by the men who served on the Joint Congressional Committee and the 9/11 Commission, and instead they repeatedly mischaracterize over and over a solitary phrase from the entire 838-page report, ignoring that the authors of the sentence have disavowed that misinterpretation that the White House gives and the Saudis suggest. Not only does the phrase that they point to suggest some degree of official Saudi complicity, but when they recite the phrase they like, never once do they acknowledge the text that follows immediately afterwards, which is, and this is very important, this conclusion does not exclude the likelihood that charities with significant Saudi government sponsorship diverted funds to Al-Qaeda. As 9/11 Commissioner Bob Kerrey stated on 60 Minutes, you can't provide the money for terrorists and then say, I don't have anything to do with what they're doing. The Saudis' claim that they were exonerated directly contradicts what numerous 9/11 commissioners have said publicly. By their own admission, the commission did not have enough money or the resources to fully investigate Saudi complicity, the Saudis' involvement. But the clearest statement on this point is, again from Commissioner Bob Kerrey, It's not an exoneration. What we said, we did not with this report exonerate the Saudis. Our position is this. The kingdom played a role in giving financial and logistical support to a network of Saudi government agents and individuals here in the United States to assist the 19 hijackers open their checking accounts, rent apartments and cars, their living expenses while they lived amongst us for 18 to 24 months, planning, practicing, and then carrying out the heinous crimes of 9/11 on American soil. We also claim that Al-Qaeda trained these hijackers. We make these claims based on evidence we have collected and have been trying for over a decade to lay out in a United States courtroom. The Kingdom's position is this. We should not be required to answer to you in your U.S. courts, and that there is no proof, which, by the way, there is. Based on what numerous government officials have reported, including these admirable members of Congress here today, we believe the redacted pages are a starting point for truths we and the American people deserve. We deserve to know regarding the Kingdom's involvement in 9/11. Up until recently, the Kingdom has insisted that it wants them released as well. As recently, they said, do not redact one single word. So, Mr. President, since this vital chapter of our nation's history was classified by an executive order, it is you, sir, who can, with a stroke of a pen, stop this agonizingly long, drawn-out request, enlighten the world with the truth, and keep your word. We respectfully request that you show the American people and the world what is in these 28 pages and release all documents relevant to assessing Saudi culpability. If you won't, Mr. President, and you continue to withhold this body of work that would help us in our quest for the truth, accountability, and justice, then we ask the two presidential nominees to pledge their commitment to transparency and promise to declassify these pages at the upcoming 2016 Republican and Democratic national presidential conventions. We ask that presumptive Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton reconfirm the position that she held in 2003 when she signed a letter to then-President George Bush, along with Senators Joe Biden and John Kerry, requesting immediate declassification of the 28 pages and pledge to release the 28 pages when she becomes president and all documents relevant to assessing Saudi culpability. We ask the same of Donald Trump. As we approach the 15th anniversary of the murderous attacks of September 11th, the families and survivors implore members of Congress to continue to read the 28 pages and join on to House Res 779. And we ask you, the media, to please keep up the good work and keep the pressure on the White House to release the 28 pages. We also implore House representatives to pass the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, JASTA, by enacting legislation narrowly crafted to hold accountable any nation responsible for funding a terrorist attack on American soil in a U.S. court. And with the declassification of these 28 pages, we can reach our ultimate goal of the truth, accountability, and justice we deserve, and thwart future terrorist attack here on American soil. Because first, we must know the truth. And second, we must fight their bankrollers, no matter who they may be or what country they may come from. To let another anniversary pass, as we are approaching the 15th anniversary of the murder of our loved ones and the injuries, without coming clean with the American people and enacting JASTA, this would be morally indefensible. And we urge the President to sign on to the 779, Congress to push for House Res 14, and to pass JASTA. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Strada, and I thank you all for being here today. I am here today to give my perspective as a 9/11 child and urge Congress to sign on to House Res 779. I was just 4 years old when my father, Tom Strada, was killed on September 11, 2001. My brothers and I have grown up without our dad tucking us in at night, cheering us on at our sporting events, and being there at our graduations. We miss him every day. I am here to represent the nearly 3,000 9/11 children who lost a parent to the heinous acts of terrorism that took place in 2001. When summer ends and lives change back into school routines, the 15th anniversary of our parents' murders quickly approaches. However, we 9/11 children are still at the same place we were 15 years ago, in the dark. We are in the dark about who is responsible for the murder of our parents. 9/11 children are growing up in a world where it is hard to trust our own president. Although President Obama has committed to release the 28 pages, the truth regarding what nation gave support for the 9/11 attacks still remains hidden from us and the American people. It is in these 28 pages that would help me and all other 9/11 children close this chapter. There is no such thing as full closure when losing a loved one to terrorism. However, declassifying the 28 pages will allow us to learn some of the truth. Isn't that what we, the 9/11 children, deserve? My father lived by the saying, do the right thing. And today I'm urging Congress to do the right thing and sign on to House Res 779 and asking President Obama to keep his word and declassify the 28 pages without further delay. Thank you.
Let me also, before we take questions, there's another family member here today, Kathy Owens. And early this morning, I met with Sharon Tremoli, and they were here to also give support. And so at this point, let me see who might have questions of any one of us. Why don't you get a little bit closer, and then you can come to the microphone. So again, you, the press, can make the difference. You, the press, can go to the White House press briefing. You can ask the president, you can ask his representatives why you have not kept your word to the families. And then also, we are going to be writing a letter that we will send to the chairman of the Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, and the ranking member, Adam Schiff, next week, asking them to give us a hearing the first week that we come back in September of this year.